going. When you have a lot of vertical wind shear, which is what we're seeing right now, it shears apart the storm and the eye falls apart. That causes the pressure to rise, that causes the winds to decrease, and we have a weaker storm. Now, I hate to use the term weaker because we're still looking at
about a 5, we're talking about a 3.
We're talking about a 3,
still.
Borderline 4. You know, it's right around 130 mile an hour max sustained winds, and that weakening trend could continue. You know, we're still looking at landfall later tonight. So,
all right, so get your basics. This is Tampa. Fort Myers is here, expecting a landfall. It's Tampa and just southward. But as Ed mentioned, what you don't see is that very symmetrical circular storm. You don't see that symmetrical eye, and just getting ripped apart a little bit. So all is relative, as you mentioned. Still a very powerful Category 4 or strong 3. Either way, it's going to have big impacts.
Yeah.
But we're already seeing it today.
And as these storms weaken, we've been talking about the wind field spreads out. So while the max sustained winds are down, the stronger wind field has expanded from the center, as we see with weakening storms.
So from here all the way down to here.
So we're still looking at surge all the way into southern Florida. And with the track, if the center passes just south of Tampa Bay, that will spare Tampa Bay and a lot of real estate, a lot of property. I mean, the worst case for this thing to make landfall up here, north of Tampa, which it doesn't appear that is likely at this point, probably more south towards Sarasota and Venice, and they could deal with the worst of the storm surge from this.
All right, let's talk about problems we've already had today. Multiple tornado warnings, and I mean multiple, all across the state here. So this is the radar. So again, this is the center of circulation. You see that radar image that you're familiar with seeing, but these outer rain bands have been harassing the Florida Peninsula all day. Each one of these individual polygons are active tornado warnings. Go ahead.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
We've already had a lot
11
down here.
11 tornado warnings
That's
ongoing.
just right now.
Yeah, that's an outbreak.
And we've already had incredible pictures of these large wedges, these huge tornadoes. So that is just, unfortunately, part of the game here when you're dealing with these outer rain bands. So you have this forward motion like this, and then within that you have this shear that takes the lower winds like that. So that's what gives you that. Yeah, that's
and these storms this outer feeder band of Milton, all these individual storms that are kind of by themselves have the ability to take on rotation a little bit faster. It's more enhanced. So this is where we would get essentially your more damaging tornado threat, where you have these isolated supercell thunderstorms. I mean, there's still a tornado threat within here, but it's definitely maximized with this outer band when you have these like discrete thunderstorms that are racing off to the north like that. So.
Okay, this is I-4, so Tampa up to Orlando. If you've been to Disney, Disney sits just south of Orlando, and then on up to Daytona Beach here. So all of those areas being affected. Earlier this afternoon, Disney shut down. The folks at Universal shut down, etc. So we're going to continue to see these rain bands come in, but as Ed mentioned, this could be the worst as far as what they're going to experience here on the East Coast, at least for now. And then we're looking at landfall tonight. What do you think, about 9, 10 o'clock tonight?
Yeah, earlier, I mean, even earlier today, I was thinking, you know, maybe closer to midnight, maybe a little after.
You can see it right there.
Yeah, now it looks like it might be coming in perhaps a little bit.
So here's the center of circulation. Here's Tampa. So yeah, I can see that at 9 o'clock tonight. But they're already feeling the impact. So if you have family or friends down there, I'm sure they're already losing power or maybe seeing some flooding at this point.
And your hurricane force winds extend out 30 to 40 miles, maybe a little more from the center. So it's not like this whole thing is hurricane force winds. It's this very confined area right around the eye wall. Of course, under the eye wall, there's really nothing going on briefly. But once you get into the eye wall, that's where the wind really gets destructive.
By the way, here on Facebook, if you have any questions, Ed's got the computer out. You can look and see if you have any questions you want to put in.
I'm actually going to take a look and see if anyone has any specific questions. You want to keep talking, Tom?
So this is our center of circulation. Ed and I were debating something, I guess it was yesterday, it being a fast-moving storm. So in other words, it's here now. It's going to be offshore by tomorrow. So that's good in the fact that it gets through here quickly. It's bad that when you have that strong forward motion, you also get a pretty impressive storm surge with that.
Yeah, and with Tampa Bay, I mean, Tampa Bay, there's so much. This is a big body of water. I mean, if you've ever been to Tampa Bay, I mean, it's
that huge
it's like the water almost goes to the horizon at some point. So, I mean, if we had a surge into there, it would be an absolute disaster. So the fact that it's just going to be going just south of Tampa Bay is going to save a lot of real estate in that area if it takes this track, but we do think it's probably going to make landfall.
Looks that way.
Yeah, somewhere between, I'd say, Bradenton down through Venice, Sarasota area, possibly even as far south as Port Charlotte, but I would guess that it would be just just north of there.
Yeah.
Where it would make landfall. But we were talking about the tornado threat. These are already the confirmed tornadoes that we've had.
Well, visuals, right?
Visuals. Now they might be of the same tornado.
Oh, I got you, like something like this.
Yeah, multiple reports of the same tornado. I mean, this is I-95 here, so we're probably getting a lot of people that were on I-95 seeing the funnel.
Reports, that's a good point.
But ones that you see kind of more separated like this, those could be totally different tornadoes within this whole system.
So we're going to see a lot more of that as we head into the night. And of course, at nighttime, you can't see them like you can during the day, so that's one of the issues that becomes a bigger deal at nighttime. So back to that satellite, and would you have the spaghettis on here too?
Yeah, so this is actually really neat because it's showing these are all different. I mean, there's way more model runs than what I have shown here, but it gives you the idea that there is a significant consensus for this thing to make landfall basically right at Tampa Bay south. You see all these cluster of lines, those are individual model runs, and each model has a different input, different variable, different atmospheric variable, and they print out a different solution on which way this thing's going to go. But they're all converging on this track, which is just south of Tampa and north of Port Charlotte. So right there is probably where we're thinking, if I had to guess, is where we would see landfall. And right here is where we would see the worst of the surge, worst of the wind, and then obviously the storm will continue to.
And one of the things we've been showing you on CBS 21 is these folks had a lot of damage from Helene, the one that came through a couple of weeks ago. And what happened was they have all this debris there. And then what happened in North Carolina, a lot of the resources went north, things like dump trucks and tow trucks, all that kind of stuff. So you got a lot of debris just sitting here. So the concern is a lot of that stuff will A, float, B, become projectiles. I mean, you're talking about 2x4s hanging around, all that stuff. You know, in front of people's houses. So that's one of the big concerns.
You know, it really is impressive to think, you know, obviously the Helene made landfall up here in the Panhandle or the Great Bend area. So they didn't even see or weren't even really near the eye wall of the hurricane, but just the surge itself caused so much damage. So
and that's what you're showing here.
Yeah, and that's exactly why surge is, it's not only the #1 killer, but it's by far the costliest in terms of destruction. I mean, we're looking at a potentially still a 9 to 13 foot storm surge. Probably maximized, as you get towards Sarasota, Bradenton, Venice. Those are the spots that I think seem to me like could be ground zero with this. Once you get down towards Fort Myers, Naples, Bonita Beach, those areas probably looking at 8 to 12 feet, which is still very significant because you think of the ceiling in your home. How tall is this?
8 foot in my house.
8 foot. So you're filling up your entire living room with water. So if you have a ground floor, the whole bottom floor is inundated with water, and it has force. It's moving.
Something interesting to point out. So as Ed alluded to, pretty big here in Tampa Bay. So what happens is, as the storm moves through, you have this onshore flow, and you get this storm surge one way. And then as the storm, think about that rotation, is doing this, you get winds coming back this way, and then you get a storm surge on the other side of the bay that if folks aren't thinking about. And then take that same thought and put it here. That's what's going to happen tomorrow to places like Daytona Beach and Jacksonville. There's going to be this onshore storm flow because the storm is sitting here and pushing all that water back on shore. So.
You know, and if it takes the right track, if it goes just south of the center, goes just south of Tampa, I mean, we could see parts of Tampa Bay actually empty and get beached.
Yeah, people don't realize that. So it pushes all the water back out, and you've seen perhaps pictures in the past where it's literally sand all through Tampa Bay, the bay itself. So yeah, it is kind of a wild thing to see, and that actually happens a lot in some of these storms.
So the big threat, obviously, with this has always been the storm surge threat, and it looks like, again, right here is probably where we're going to see the worst of it, and obviously the wind too.
Oh yeah, this
is going to be significant.
So winds going 110 for all of these areas, so all the way down to Fort Myers, well inland, and then remember Orlando's sitting right here, and they've got the potential for 74 to 110 mile per hour winds, and that includes Cape Canaveral, where they launched the rocket from. That's way out here. All the way down to what about Jupiter, maybe some areas there. So that's a large area dealing with a lot of wind issues.
And there's really there's no mountainous terrain in Florida,
no,
so
there's
all
nothing. Flat. There's nothing to stop it.
Right. So as the storm moves inland, it weakens, but it still doesn't necessarily cause the max wind speed to weaken drastically. So we're going to have hurricane force winds all across, all the way to the other side, to the Space Coast. So.
All right, so that's what we're looking
Yep.
at, a forecast for tonight with that landfall. But as we showed you, we're already dealing with tornadoes, flooding not far behind, and then the storm surge flooding, which will come as that storm gets closer.
Yep, and of course we'll have more updates tonight on CBS 21 News, which starts at 5 o'clock.
We got to go get ready for that.
We do.
All right.
We'll see you then.
Thanks for checking us out. Appreciate it. All right, what do we got? 7 minutes or so.